Today we're talking about kindness. And so I'm going to have Todd introduce himself. He's my better half. Todd, why don't you take a moment to just introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. This is going to be a sockless Sunday. I'm not wearing socks for anybody. Don't be shocked. I just wanted to start this off in a light way, um, I think that I was thinking back on how to introduce myself, and this is a sort of a circuitous way to get there. But when I was in university, I had this professor. He was Tom Miller. His name was, and he. I had a 3-hour lecture on Friday mornings at 8:30. And so, if you can remember back to those days when you're in school, Friday mornings are the worst time to be actually trying to focus on things. And he spoke without notes, and he lectured for 3 hours without a break. And he was brilliant, and he threw so much information at you that you were just busy taking notes and you're learning. But there was so much that it wasn't like one takeaway. There wasn't
Mm.
one focus on what we were doing, but I learned a lot. This is kind of the other approach to that. So what this is about is more um, focusing on one thing at a time, and I really like that part of it. We just work on one soulful thing at a time, and I think that what I like about this, it's like a ritual. It's like you get up and you brush your teeth. Well, on Sunday mornings we get up and we do this, and we talk about one specific thing or one kind of a topic it goes off in different ways. But it's I love this for that structure. So anyway, thank
No, it's so great. So Todd and I have been doing this for, I guess we've been at it about a month and a half. Um, and it's born out of this idea that there are so many conversations happening in the world about very essential, challenging things that the world is facing right now. But we need these essential conversations where we take a look at a theme for the month. Last month with values, this month is kindness, which seems like a bit of a cliche in that term. It's on coffee mugs, it's on your t-shirts. During COVID, we had, be kind, be calm, be safe. Bonnie Henry was talking about that in our communities, and it's become kind of a slogan, but each one of these values in and of itself are so important that we spend time. So our tagline being essential conversations for curious people is also, I keep freezing.
We can still hear you. So
Can you? Okay, good. I'll just make sure that whenever I'm frozen, I'm smiling.
yeah.
Otherwise, we get those really great outtakes, right? But yeah, it's just the fact is we spend so much time talking about all of the things that are happening in the world, which are essential to look at. But this is kind of like a weekly reset. So whether you're watching this on a Sunday or you're watching it another day during the week, we're just glad that you're here and thinking about these conversations, thinking about these values, thinking about these things that truly matter in the world that we don't spend as much time thinking and focusing on. And so today is about kindness. And we're really so just if you're new to the Soulful Way, first of all, we've got the Soulful Way newsletter that goes out every single week. It sets the tone for the theme. And then on Sundays we have the Soulful Sessions live. And then we also interview every time during the month. The third Sunday of the third Sunday of the month, we interview someone where this is a theme of their world. This month, we're actually interviewing Dave Chesney, and he is a community leader. He started the first online newspaper called the White Rock Sun in our community of BC, Canada. And he's just a pillar of strength and community. And so we're interviewing. And then the last Saturday of the month, we host a workshop. And we did this last month, we hosted a values workshop, and it was amazing. We'll talk more about that later. But it's just a really beautiful way of coming into this flow. And we're hoping more and more that we're building a community of people that are able to just have touch points in those things that are positive and life giving and affirming. And so, why does kind of I want to start off just thinking about what kindness means now. And so we're going to do a little bit of a centering exercise. We tend to do this every week just because it allows us to let go of what was ever happening in the morning, what was happening in your week, and we're just going to come to a place of center and relax. So I'll just ask you to set your things aside and just move into a quieter flow within yourself, and just close your eyes or gently rest your eyes down somewhere that just allows you to relax, and just taking some beautiful deep breaths. I want you to just think about what kindness means to you and what pops into your mind when you go into that place of calm. Maybe when you think of that, a person comes to mind, or a kind act that you experienced, or something that you saw or read about, focusing on what is good and compassion in the world. So just give you a couple of moments of silence to just consider kindness for a moment. And just to hold that thought as we begin our talk of just what kindness means for you and why it's so important to center in the moment of this. And then when you're ready, you can just open your eyes and come to. It's just such a busy world that we live in, such a busy time of, the news that's coming at us of late. And it doesn't feel like a very kind world sometimes. And so it's important to come back to these ideas that are rooting and foundational in our lives. So, why really does kindness kind of matter at this stage? And why would we pick this now? And it was actually Kindness Day last month, and it didn't flow with our theme, but kindness is important all the time, every day, in every moment. And even though it's become this slogan or this day or it's this movement, um, I've been thinking a lot lately, and Todd and I have been talking a lot lately about the fact that it isn't small at all, that it's the very foundation. And it seems as though sometimes when we're online, it feels as though that's not true anymore. There's such divisiveness, there's busyness, there's uncertainty with what's happening in the world right now. And so we want to come back to this idea of why this is important. It's sometimes those things that are happening, are that are most important are quieter. They're not the ones that people pay attention to. And so, Todd, you're going to talk a little bit about just why you think kindness matters in the world right now with everything that's happening.
Okay, one of the I think that empathy and kindness go hand in hand, and I think that it trickles upward. And I think that it starts on a micro level, but becomes a bigger thing than you would expect it to. So the one thing that came to mind when we started talking about kindness, I remember there was a when you used to go. So I'm going to date myself a little bit. When you used to go actually into a video store, like a Blockbuster, you had to rent a video,
Yeah.
and you had to actually walk through the aisles, and you had to pick out one you'd like, and then there was a lot invested in your time to do it. Um, and they would always say at the end on the receipt, "Be kind and rewind." So for those of you that don't know what VHS is, it's a big, it's a disc or it's a tape that goes in, and you play it to the end, and you have to rewind it to the beginning to start the video again. So the "Be kind, rewind" thing was basically paying it forward to people that got the video next time, so they didn't have to get home and go
Yeah.
out, rewind the whole video again before it started again. So
Yeah.
I think globally that's it helps us to focus. I think that the focusing on kindness um, creates a mindset in the world that we will do better. We'll do better around the people in the community. So I think that um, yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard to. It's an interesting topic because it's so general and so broad and so specific at the same time.
Yeah. Mm.
And I think that globally, if we focus on empathy, looking at what other people are doing,
Um,
focusing on being kind and how we move out in the world, I just think that's the way we need to approach things
mm.
at the macro level.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it is such a trying time right now. It's such a busy time, it's such a trying time, it's a time of uncertainty. And so, yeah, these conversations, at least it's a start that we're focusing, because what we focus on more, we get more of. And so I know you and I in our relationship and our family, and this is really I want to just take a moment to share kind of the story behind the scenes of where did all this values work come from? Why did we even start this? Why is it in why the soulful way? Where does this come from? And we're going to talk about um, the three elements that we kind of implemented with our children that is the foundation for what kindness is. And I talked about it a bit in the Soulful Way newsletter this week. So this really was born from the fact that you and I, in having children, Todd, we decided, even though we loved our careers and things were thriving, and we absolutely felt as though we were doing the work in the world. You know, at that time, you were working in education, I was working in, values action alignment. We were talking about ideas that really mattered. We really loved our direction in the world. But the moment at which we had children, all of a sudden you want something more. You want something that isn't where you head out the door every day to do good in the world, but your children are heading out to a school. And so I never thought I would ever homeschool. And Todd was a beautiful support in that, of course. And we never thought we would homeschool, but we wanted something more for our children. And we wanted them to have the idea of looking at the world in a way that was values based. And kindness is really at the root of that. And so, where this all kind of was born, or this idea of the noticing that we're going to talk about today, that empathy, that noticing. Todd, you and I were driving in a car one time with our little boys in the back of the car, and there was a man who was homeless who was standing on the median in between where the cars pull up to the light. And Liam and Nathaniel were in the back. And normally we had already been cultivating that idea of connecting with people when they look sad, or when they needed something from us, or they needed us to stop and pay attention to whether they were, playing a guitar on the side of the road or dropping money into their cup, and really listening and purposefully engaging. And so when we were pulling up to the light, Liam and Nathaniel said from the back, Mommy, you have to stop. We have to stop. We have to help that man. And I couldn't. It was unsafe for us to stop. And so I kept driving through the intersection, and, particularly Nathaniel became very upset, and they both kind of started to whimper or cry. And I said, "Oh, boys, like, I'm so sorry we couldn't stop, but let's just think about this for a moment. We can't always be there for everybody when they need us. There's lots of people that are in need in the world." And so we developed this idea of what we call sparkle thoughts. And so I said, "You know what? Let's just take a moment, even though we couldn't stop there and it wasn't safe to stop, we can still send our beautiful thoughts and love, and we could surround that person with love." And so we started this idea of sparkle thoughts, and we would drive around the community, and we would actually, when we were just driving around doing groceries or whatever, we would see people that look sad on the side of the road, or, distressed. And we would just, even if we didn't stop, even if we couldn't care for them in that particular moment, or there was nothing we could do, or that wouldn't have been the right thing to do, was to interrupt them in their day or what they were doing, we would send sparkle thoughts. And sometimes those are the most beautiful things that we can do. And so it started this way of looking at everything in the world from an observance perspective. And so from that was born More Kind Acts, and we developed something called the Mad Hero Project. And it was really just a fun and playful way of talking about how we cultivate that hero within ourselves, and how we help to cultivate that hero within other people, and to be able to celebrate when they're doing things in the world that are good, because we need a lot more of this. And that's not really what's happening in our world right now, at least from what we're seeing from the outside. And we're going to talk more about the inside today. So it started off with those sparkle thoughts, and then we developed this framework for heroism in the world. And we really thought about what are those elements or ideas that really keep us rooted in what we want to cultivate, what hope we want to create, what we want to do in our own lives personally, and how we want to inspire people in the world. And it came down to three elements. And one is being a vigilant observer, which is being able to see things around us, that concept of noticing, of just being attuned to the people around us, the experiences. And then the second is about being a compassionate thinker. So not just looking at something, but how may I help? And even if I can't physically help, what kind of energy can I send? What kind of love can I send? What can I do? And then the third is being a conscious co-creator, which is what Todd and I are doing in this, and what all of you are watching this, who are a part of this, who are experiencing this. You're being a conscious co-creator in how we create the world, so that we're not just being dragged off into what the media is showing us, or what the news is telling us, or what, people are sharing as far as their comments online, and it's about us going deeper and to be able to hold on to the things that really truly matter. And so anything else you want to add to that, Todd? I know, that was such a big part of our lives, being in that state of just cultivating that with our kids. Anything else you want to add about what you noticed or thought about that?
Yeah, I think personally, and for the kids, I think they probably notice it, and or I think people do notice it, but I sometimes find it's harder to not be kind than it is to be kind. And what I mean by that is, I was out yesterday, and I was walking by. There was a homeless guy, and he asked for money, and it sounds stupid, but I don't carry money anymore. It's all taps everywhere, right? And
Yeah.
so I feel like I should, and I feel guilty about not having anything to give because I have so much compared to this individual,
Yeah.
that it's like I need to go to the bank every morning to put, like, $10 in my pocket, or some loonies or toonies. If you're Canadian, you'll understand that. To be able
Yeah.
to share. So, but the feeling of going, oh, I wish I had done that.
Yeah.
It's the missed opportunities that is really what,
Yeah.
it doesn't drive you to be more kind, but it's a residual of not being kind when it doesn't really cost you very much. So
Yeah. I do. I think, and you and I, but if anyone's been watching what we've been doing or sharing the conversations over the years, one of the ways you and I fell in love, Todd, is that way back when people did carry money and people did carry change, it was a big thing in my young life that I wouldn't judge another person. I don't believe and don't feel like money is mine. I feel like it's a currency of flow and exchange, and it's just a tool to show love, to live love, to be of abundance, to care about one another. And so, when you and I met, Todd, one of the reasons I fell in love with you was because you would always carry a pocket full of change. And I think you're right. Like, I didn't realize, and you hadn't told me that story until right now, but I think that we do need to go back out and carry some change with us and carry some cash with us. We need to get back to that, because that's one of the fundamental ways. And you and I, it was never just about the money. And even with the boys, in there growing up, we would stop and listen to a person playing a musical instrument. It was really important for us. If anyone was busking on the street, if anyone was showing that effort of wanting to share, to be able to earn something, to show, to give some pleasure to people, you and I walking around with the kids, we would always stop and not just drop a coin in and wander on. We would stay for the whole song. And we look at our boys now and how compassionate and kind they are in the world, and that they pay attention. I'm so grateful we did that. I'm so grateful that we planted those seeds, because I do think those are fundamentally important, and not just that we drop a coin into someone's, hat, but that we stop and have that conversation and ask how they are. And you're right, it is tougher in our world now to be able to do that, to give. And I think actually you and I are maybe feeling a spark right now that we need to go to the bank today and we need to pull out a little bit of change, and just so that it is a gesture. It's not like you're going to change someone's life through a kind act like that. It's that it's the human connection, which is really what we're getting to today. And so, I just to take a bird's eye view and step back a little bit, what I found was fascinating when I was looking at what kindness is and taking a look at where this even comes from. The root of kindness is actually kin, that idea of having a circle of people where you give and you connect and you are kind, but it's that kin of belonging. And then as kindness has developed, it actually expanded so that it wasn't just about kin, your circle. It was about expanding that circle and widening that connection, and There's the frozen I can see my frozen face. The that frozen, that beautiful expansion of what belonging is. And so John O'Donohue, who taught is one of my favorites. He's a philosopher and an Irish poet, and he was just a phenomenal man in the world. And a lot of what he wrote about was about belonging. And his quote was, "We are here to belong to each other." And so kindness actually started with kin, which started with circle, which then expanded. And then there's been a whole flow in that, right? Because when we feel that sense of kindness and how this relates, talking today about the global and systemic element of kindness, it when we start with that place of kinship, when we feel belonging and connection to one another, we are kinder and our communities are better and bigger and more beautiful and more connected and more soulful. But it starts with that noticing one another, and then it starts with that, compassionate thinker piece. But today, just talking about that. Anything else to add to that, Todd, about, just that flow in the world?
No, I think it's important. I think it's
Mhm.
the basis of everything. I mean, we think of ourselves as individuals that don't have an impact in the world, um, and I think that the people that are the big higher end decision makers probably think themselves the same way. But really, if everybody is thinking in terms of an empathetic worldview and the fact that I want to do something nice for someone today, or if I see an opportunity, I'm going to slow down and I'm gonna do something that's kind for somebody, then that's the key to everything.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sound like a Beatles
absolutely.
song. I don't know, sorry.
What's that?
Sounds like a Beatles song of some kind. I don't know.
But that's the whole thing. You know, I think we show up for so many conversations in the world that are about what's wrong with the world, what's challenging, what's frightening. Um, I don't know that people are showing up for as many of these conversations. And it's you and I are continuing to do this, continuing to offer this, continuing to try this because we really hope that we turn the tables on where people are paying attention. Because I think in the world, we're putting a lot of attention on things that are bringing a sense of hopelessness or anxiety or frustration at what's going on in the world. And it doesn't mean we turn a blind eye. Being a vigilant observer is seeing all of it, seeing what isn't working well, seeing what is working well, and then considering what we can do about it, and trying to be able to come from that perspective. So I want to just touch a little bit on, me. I love the research. I love to see where it's happening in the world. This is the fascinating part of everything that you and I pick. We dive in deeper. So we start to live, eat, sleep, and breathe these particular connections, these ideas, these values. And so when I dig in a little deeper, I always love to look at where is it working? What's really going on? What's the history of where this value comes from? And then how is it expanding in the world? Because it doesn't feel like kindness is expanding right now. It isn't as prevalent, but there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. So I just want to share a little bit of those things for folks that are watching. So the research from the Max Planck Institute of Evolutionary Anthropology shows that, this might not be surprising, but cooperation and helping behavior are those core human traits. We can forget that. We can forget that it's not about competition in a world of capitalist society. It's not about competition as much as it's about cooperation. Humans survive not through that competition piece, but through the cooperation. That's how we survive. That's how we thrive. That's how we shift from this, surviving and that sense of lack to that sense of hopefulness and that sense of connectedness. And then the research in positive psychology at the University of California and the University of Pennsylvania shows that acts of kindness increase that happiness, strengthen relationships, build trust in communities. I have a really beautiful friend, Steffi Black, who actually gave up her job at Global Television in Toronto and went into corporate kindness. And her slogan for a number of years when she was doing this was called Spread the Kindness. And she would talk about this helper's high. And now she actually is a Qigong instructor and she's, immersed now in more of that soulful piece of how you're living kindness within in a quiet, soulful way. And then she inspires that out in the world. But she used to talk a lot about, and it's not a new concept, that helper's high is your endorphins, the oxytocin flows in your brain. You were talking this morning, Todd, as we were driving along, and a woman stopped at the crosswalk. And then what did you say? You passed by and you made a beautiful comment.
You
Do you
know what?
remember?
I don't remember. It was early. I had it in my
I
car.
love that. I love that. It's so ingrained in you that you don't even think about it. But you actually, when you stopped and let her go, as soon as you did, you said, we drove on, and you said, it always makes me feel so good when I have the opportunity to stop and do something kind for somebody else. And and that really is what it is. It's quite a selfish thing, being able to do something for somebody else. And you are, beyond a doubt, Todd, the kindest person I have ever known in my life. And just you bring me a tea when I need one. You'll make a beautiful meal. You'll help. We've always ebbed and flowed in our relationship, in our business. And you just show up in such kind ways. And you and I try to live that. And I love that. And it's a little bit selfish because whenever we do something kind for somebody else, we feel that surge of something being right. And that's that whisper inside of ourselves, that soulful wisdom that's innate within us, that when we do something kind, whether you believe in God or, a creator, or it's Jesus or Buddha or Allah for you, whatever that is, it's like when you show compassion or kindness for somebody else, it's like that greater entity that's in the depth of your soul whispers, good for you. This is what life's about. This is what matters. And I think that's why our bodies are biologically wired to have a surge of good feelings and good, nerve endings and neurotransmitters fire off when we do something kind for somebody else. So, um, this idea of so the positive psychology, it strengthens relationships. We feel that surge. And then in the 1990s, there is that random acts of kindness. The foundation that was built, it was a grassroots movement. It started, as everybody knows, that has surged, thank goodness, in the world. And so that it was bringing that kindness, that education about what all of these benefits are to kindness, not just for others, but to ourselves, and encouraging those small, minute acts, acts of kindness that were really important. And for years, you and I, this well about me, Todd, but I when I was younger, I read lots about this. I wanted to live it. I always felt, especially in my 20s, as I was just learning to grow and figuring out who I was as a person, I would I would want to take these things out for a spin. And so one of the things that I would do is it was just a little thing I held in my own little heart long before I met you, was Fairies Anonymous. And so I would see something going on. So obviously this vigilant observer and these elements of the modern day hero have been ingrained in me for a lot of years. But I would hear or see or observe something going on around me, and then I would do an anonymous act to just be kind or loving. And I don't say that to be able to bring attention to it. I only ever share it because I think it's just a reminder for all of us, and it made me feel so good. And one story in particular was, I remember in my apartment building in Toronto, I could hear a girl in the door down from me, and she was crying. And I went out into the hall. I was heading out somewhere, and I could tell that she was crying. And, thin walls, divey little apartments when we were young and, didn't have a big budget for life. And, uh, and so I went home that night, and I picked flowers on my way home from where I was. And then I just painted a little vase for her, and I made her a little note, and I just left the flowers and the vase and the note on her door and just said, all will be well and you are loved. And I think something along those lines of the note. And I just left it, and she didn't know it was from me because I did a lot of study about the fact that when we do these acts and then we take responsibility for them, or we're there and we hand it to someone, there is that feeling of obligation where someone feels like, they feel beholden, or I would never have wanted her to know that I overheard her crying face to face, but maybe that just helped her. And then you and I, we started a group that was called Fairies Anonymous, and it was the Yes In There Out There initiative, that when you build it inside and then you take it out there in the world. So whatever your way is, whatever this sparks in you, we're constantly evolving in these things, and we got away from it for a while running those groups or doing that, and now we're coming back to it. And it's just like another level of it, and now we're reminded, and then we share stories. But these essential conversations for curious people are important because we need to keep this stuff top of mind. This is more important because this is the kind of world that we're cultivating within and the kind of world we're cultivating out in the world. And as we share, we ripple on. And so then I just a few more little tidbits of just, juicy knowledge. The United Nations World Happiness Report consistently finds that countries with strong social trust and community support rank highest in well-being. We know this, and this is maybe why you're the kindest man on the planet that I know, Todd Maki. Finland is one of those countries that they're known for this experience. So Finland, Iceland, and New Zealand have all experimented with policy approaches that place human well-being and social trust alongside economic growth, that they're in tandem. And so it is something that's happening in the world, even though it doesn't feel it. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, an international policy organization representing many of the world's leading economies, has developed actually a well-being framework that measures social national success not only through economic indicators but also through health and community connection and quality of life. And we know that when people talk about the cities that people most like to live in, and it's this is more the conversation. And then I feel very privileged. I know you do too, Todd, that Mark Carney, our prime minister, is really focused on that. That was all last month. We were talking about values, and that's really where he stems from. And even seeing everything that's going on in Australia right now, and how Mark Carney is out there and they're laughing and they're smiling and they're talking about what can be. And it was a post that I posted, but I want to pass it over to you to just talk about, you're just so entrenched in all of that. Maybe talk a little bit about what that means out in the world right now and what you're seeing.
Yeah, I think we tend to talk a lot about Carney because we live in Canada and we get a lot of
Yeah,
news about him. But I really
there's
think there's
lots.
a tangible difference in how he approaches the world. I think that, I think that I think he leads with kindness, like it kind of comes from him. And so in the midst of um, mayhem in the Middle East and in still in the Ukraine, and just there's all kinds of conflicts all over the place. Um, Mark Carney's going around and still trying to create relationships, and so he
Yeah.
was in Australia and Japan this past week, and he signed a bunch of deals. But he was the first Canadian Prime Minister to come in like 20 years to speak in front of the Australian Parliament. And so they showed the video of him, and he basically got a standing ovation coming in. Then he's very humble. He's not really he really doesn't, I think he enjoys it, but it's not his main focus. But he got a really great reception from the Australian Parliament. And so we saw this, and then there was an Australian. I wish I could do an Australian accent. It would be much more effective. But uh, the Australian commentator was talking about the fact that he came and he said, "I'm really not a fan. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm actually going to compliment a politician." And
Yeah.
he said he basically came to Australia and said, "Hey, do you want to be our cousin? And do you want to work with us? Do you want to play?" And
Yeah.
really, that's the crux of it. And so
Absolutely.
when you see the pictures of most politicians, they're standing there and they get those horrible pictures where they're standing beside each other, shaking each other's hands, and one of them's not smiling, and their body language is "Don't get too close to me. I don't like you at all." And then and I've seen this before with Carney, with Macron in France. They're like college buddies. They look like they've known each other
Yeah.
for so long, and they enjoy
Beautiful.
company. And Albanese was the same thing, and I don't really
Yeah.
think I knew Albanese that well, but they showed up and they were like almost giggling. They were talking together and they were just
Yeah.
smiling.
It's a beautiful balance too between, you and I added a little bit to our tagline, Essential Conversations for Curious People, that was intellect where intellect meets soul.
Mhm.
And I think that that really is those leaders, because one of the things that Australian commentator was making that really, just fanned the flames on me wanting to share it. There were lots of beautiful F bombs, and it just was so raw and so real. But it was about the fact that he's a finance guy. And he was like, it's not just that he's kind and sweet and loving and soulful and playful. It's that it's rooted in intellect, in talking about the numbers and how they can make it work, and that intelligence with soul. It's just so beautiful to see that, and I think that's what surprised people, and the joke that's always made is there's an adult in the room. It's that, and I'm sure it's not true of all politicians, and there's many beautiful politicians out there that are really sacrificing a huge part of their lives in order to stand up for countries and try to do what's right, even though we may not agree with their ways of coming at it. But it's that it's rooted in intellect, but it's also the foundation of all of that is the kindness, the love, the values, and the focus on that. Because you could just focus on the numbers and that would be great enough.
Yeah.
As an economist, they could just focus on the numbers, but it's about making life more joyful, more beautiful, more supportive. And it's so needed right now in our world. And I think that's why you and I, we have never really talked. In our home, we talk about politics, but we're more vocal than we've ever been. And it's not because he's a politician. It's because he's trying to shape a world along with Albanese, along with Macron. They're trying to shape a world that's more loving, more soulful, more playful, that also has beautiful, abundant benefit as well
but
too.
but also in a values-based way, in the kindness way. So
100%.
what his this latest thing he's talking about, the middle powers are basically not the
Yeah.
superpower. And what he's putting together is a coalition and creating free trade. He's creating a free trade deal with India, with Australia, with New Zealand, with the UK, and
Yeah.
basically what he said was we're creating a free trade zone. We're trying to create a free trade type of a zone agreement uh,
Yeah.
between these countries, and these are what they're all these countries have in common is they're democratic countries. They're friendly democratic countries,
Yeah.
and so what he's not just trying to cut a deal for the sake of cutting the deal. He's strategically going, okay, the Aussies, I like them. Let's do something with them. Let's go to Japan. They're really nice people.
Yeah.
Let's do a deal. We can deal with them. We know we're not going to get messed around with, and nobody's going to play games with us. And we're just going to make friends with the people we want to make friends of, and we'll ignore
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's just it's beautiful to watch it unfold. It's such a dichotomy out there right now. Like, you turn on the news and you see, like, most of the news is just so heart-wrenching right now. There's so many people struggling and so many challenges that are going on in the world, and it's such uncertainty. And then you've got such a juxtaposition,
yeah.
right, on the other side of it, where you see the smiling picture, and we get more of what we focus on, and so it's not that we don't wanna turn that blind eye to what's really going on, but where are we spending the majority of our focus and time and energy?
And it makes other people think also because I think
Mm,
I won't dwell on the internal politics of Canada, but the leader of the
mm,
opposition party is Pierre Poilievre, and he's a conservative. And but what he's doing is trying to compete with Carney, and he's having struggle trying to figure out where his lane is because basically it's hard to argue with someone that's doing all these positive things in the world.
yeah,
So it's a
you're right.
challenge for people that aren't in line
Yeah,
with values of the people that are trying to create something bigger.
yeah, and I'm sure, not to name names, but I'm sure it's embarrassing sometimes too, for those that haven't been focused on that. When you watch how, even people have been hopping the aisle in our country, and I'm sure it's happening in other countries as well too. They're hopping the aisle, and one I can't remember the name of the politician, but he just sat down, he was being interviewed, and he was a conservative, and he hopped over into the Liberal Party, and he joined the Liberal Party, and when he was being interviewed, they said, "Well, did Mark Carney convince you?" And he said, "Absolutely not." He said, "It wasn't about a convincing. I just looked at a plan. I looked at the values-based element of those things and the financial reward, and I looked at everything that was in that budget, and it makes logical sense, and I can't argue with that." And it really, I don't know, for me, it's hopeful, and my parents were always that way. They weren't attached to a party. They were attached to what the values and the policy and the vision of whoever was running, no matter what party it was. And so I was raised in that environment where, which is very different than the United States. You're a Democrat, you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, you're a Republican. In Canada, sometimes people are very committed to their party, but I was raised in a family where it was really about the values and the vision of the individual that was running. And so now those lines are all blurred. Because for all intents and purposes, as a person who's run the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada, and then you've got, you're an economist, you would probably be, in that conservative camp as a, that vein and that right wing. And yet there's such a beautiful blend. So it's about what's right for everybody. What's right economically, what's right from this perspective of kindness and the foundation of kindness and care and compassion and support, and really, that well-being framework. And so I love now that we're aligning with countries that have been doing that for a long time. Like these countries, others countries, a lot of these countries have been thinking about this for a long time, but everybody has been thinking about it in their little silos and wanting this values-based world, but it wasn't the majority of the power that was running the world. And now those middle, as you say, those middle governments, those middle countries are coming together, and collectively they're far more powerful. So it's a beautiful time that we're living in. It's a frightening time for so many, but it's a beautiful time of change, and shift for people in Europe, for Japan, for Australia. Those middle countries, it's a very hopeful time, and that's why we're having these conversations, right? So yeah. So just getting back to this idea of, the vigilant observer, is that idea, just we're going to get into a focus time where you can kind of think about your own questions, your own thoughts as you're watching this, and where you fit into it. But this vigilant observer is about taking a look at being realistic about what is going on, but then also seeing what is good. So where there are challenges, you see them, where there are opportunities, you see them, but you're being vigilant in that idea of, I love that word vigilance. You're consciously choosing to see, because so many times it would be easier to just check out from the world. And I actually had a friend this week that I went to lunch with, and she just said, "You know what? I think I'm just going to go offline. I'm not going to be involved at all. I'm just going to check out. I'm going to step away." I understand that. I understand the desire to do that, and I do have friends that live off the grid for sure. However, my counter was, I want to be a part of conversations that are going to bring the light of hope to people. That's the stage we're at in our lives, Todd, is bringing these conversations of light and hope. And we're just going to keep trying. We're just going to show up every Sunday, and we're just going to keep talking. And we're hoping that more people will come around the what we call the soulful fire, that we will just continue to have these conversations. We've just started this, so we're just building this community. We want to have these powerful conversations. At the end of the month, we want to have a workshop where we actually get to sit in community with you. We it doesn't mean we're not paying attention to everything else that's going on, but we want to root ourselves in community and kindness in this online space so that people feel they have a place to belong, so that we are kin and we're extending and expanding that circle.
And as we do the lead up to the workshop, please keep notes and ask questions and make notes of things
Yeah.
to talk about. We'll certainly
Yeah.
adapt to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we had a wonderful workshop. So let's just take a moment to say that it was really amazing. We had about 13 people there. We talked all about values. I created something called the guided journal, the Soul of Values guided journal. We got to do introspective questions. There was a lot packed into our workshop. So it was a really good learning. So for those of you that showed up or shared it or connected and communicated, thank you so much. The talk about a kind act. People spent their time filling out an evaluation form, giving us a testimonial, which we'll be sharing more this week. It was really incredible, and it gave us a glimpse. It also taught us that we're going to cover a little less. So this is called the Soul of Workshops. And so the workshops on this last Saturday of every month, there'll be 2 hours with a half an hour little coffee break at the end of it, or we can just gather and just chit chat around what we call the soulful fire. And then every month you get that guided journal to do the deeper work if you want. And then afterwards, if you're not a part of that soulful collective and that membership that we have, the subscription, that's okay too. We actually will be selling the Soul of Values, or the Soul of Kindness, whatever that guided journal is. We'll be selling those as well too if you want to do the work on your own. But our modus operandi is to build a community where we get together every single month and we touch base with what's important in the world based on values. And so, if this speaks to you, if you get a little tingle in your heart, please reach out. And you can subscribe to the Soulful Way for free. And then if it speaks to you to become part of the Soulful Collective, we would certainly love you in that circle. We want to expand that connection and that sense of belonging. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a moment just to think about what matters to us. And we're going to do a little closing meditation because we're coming to the end of our time. So we're going to do a little closing meditation. And I just during this time, I'll kind of do an intro for us to get a little more centered. And then I'd love you to be thinking about what kindness means to you and setting your intention for the week ahead. How can you be a bit more of a vigilant observer? And then it's just about noticing this week. No guilt. Everybody has busy lives, but it's sometimes the simplest act of just reminding ourselves to notice. Notice the people you're passing on the street. Notice when you can let someone into traffic. Notice the person who's at the crosswalk. See those see those moments and those glimpses of noticing as opportunities for you to show up in the world, because it won't just give to that individual and give them a little sparkle thought for their day. It will also give you a little sparkle in your heart as well too. And we want to live and breathe and eat and sleep more of that in the world. And so we'll just move into meditation. Any other thoughts, Todd, you want to add before we head in, sweetheart?
No, just be kind to yourself. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so we'll just get a little bit centered. You can just set your things aside and just, you know, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And just letting that feeling of hope rise from within you. That even through the busyness and the intensity of the world right now, there is beautiful sparks of kindness. Governments, communities coming together. And then just think about an intention you can set for your week, for noticing, so that you're a part of that movement that's always deepening and expanding. Feel the kindness that Todd and I are wrapping you in right now. Feel that sense of belonging, that light, that wisdom within you. And then feel that intention that you're setting, how you can ripple out into the world, because we need you. And then just wiggling your toes, wiggling your hands, coming back into the room and opening your eyes. Thank you for taking the time for yourself today to just engage in conversations that really do matter. Whatever this meant for you, whatever you take away, may you just feel that deeper connection, as Todd said, to being kind to yourself, to being kind to the people around you, so that we can continue to join with those other beautiful governments, communities, and organizations that are building kindness on a greater, grander level, ever expanding. So, in this next week, we invite you to just dive in. If you're seeing this recording and you want to join the Soulful Way, that's free. We have a beautiful newsletter that goes out every week, that just sets the tone. Kindness is the conversation this month. This conversation was about kind of that global flow. Next week is about relationships and our personal connection. The week after that is an interview with Dave Chesney, a community leader and beautiful editor for the White Rock Sun, and talking about social capitalism and how we connect and kindness to one another and how we can build that. And then on Saturday of the end of the month, we'll be having a workshop on the soul of kindness and doing some really fun activities and having some really soulful, engaging conversations. So, whatever way you feel called to be involved, please join us. We're thrilled to be able to expand our circle of kin. So, thank you so much. Anything you want to say, Todd, in wrapping up, darling?
Nope, just have a wonderful week.
Wonderful week. A week full of kindness. Lots of love, everybody. Until next time. Bye bye.
Bye.